An incredible weekend of racing happened once again in Misano, as we had lots of interesting storylines and quite a few riders injured thanks to those big crashes in Catalunya. Marco Bezzecchi had an injured thumb and hand, Enea Bastianini was out completely, and Pecco Bagnaia had a bruised up and very injured leg. Actually, to make things worse for Pecco Bagnaia, he was placed into a yellow colour scheme by Ducati, making his bike look like a DHL delivery van, and that whole garage look a bit like some kind of weird motorbike-related package sorting centre. But that aside, we did have an incredible race weekend, so let's take a look at the 5 things we learned from the San Marino Grand Prix. Pedrosa pushing for a podium. Danny Pedrosa came back once again for another wild card this weekend, and as last time, he seriously impressed. He actually did even better this time in Misano than he did at Jerez when he was racing earlier this year. He qualified 4th in qualifying, which is just incredible. He was actually the top KTM in qualifying, and then was top KTM for another 4th in the sprint race, and then another 4th in the feature race. He actually beat all the KTM guys in qualifying, the race and everything. He was of course riding that brand new carbon fibre chassis, which will be interesting to see how the other riders react to that in the Misano test, but you can't take anything away from Danny. He did an incredible job. He's been winning drag races against the people from CarWow and actually against all the other Red Bull vehicles, and now he was doing an incredible job in the sprint and feature race, getting so close to that podium, and I was incredibly impressed. So Danny Pedrosa once again showing just how good he is and proving that he is really the fastest test rider on the grid. Marquez Magic. Okay, so Marc Marquez didn't do anything truly magical. I mean, magical would have been a race win or something, but he did have an interesting weekend, starting with the rumours, of course. He was rumoured to be heading to Ducati's Gresini team, which I think is complete rubbish. I don't see that he would be heading there. I don't see them hiring him, and I don't see why he'd want to move there beyond the fact that his brother is already there. But he also did a very impressive job in the races. He actually qualified very well, starting in 9th, which considering where his teammates qualified is very impressive. Just making it into Q2 was impressive. And then he also improved from that grid position and headed up to 7th. There were crashes ahead of him and some people struggling, but for him to finish ahead of as many KTMs, Ducatis, Aprilias as he did, he had a very impressive weekend. And so hopefully we can see some of that Marquez magic from a few years ago returning. He obviously has been more than fast enough for many races this season to kind of challenge in those places, but hopefully after a few rounds of calming down, just getting across the finish line, he's found some consistency again and is now ready to take that consistency to the front again and start picking up some points, because he is an 8 times world champion, and that is really where he should be at the very least, even on that rubbish Honda. But either way, very impressive from him, particularly considering that all of his teammates either crashed or were just making up the numbers at the back of the field. RNF Rapid. We don't discuss Raul Fernandez very much in these videos, mostly because so far this season he hasn't been doing a lot. He's been struggling with injury, and on the races that he's been around, there's been a bit of bad luck, crashes, just not a very impressive season. But this weekend was better. He got to Q2 for the first time ever, which you would have thought would have come a little bit sooner, considering that he came in with so much hype around him, but he has finally made it, and he finished 8th in the race, which was very impressive. It's good to see him improving, and hopefully we can see him capture some of that, Moto 2 form that he had a couple of years ago. On the other side of the garage, Miguel Oliveira once again really impressed me, I have to say. Miguel was having a rough time through the practice sessions, but he pulled it out in qualifying. He managed to get into Q2, qualifying just behind Marc Marquez in 10th, and then climbed up to 6th in the feature race, which, considering where he was in the early stages of the weekend, was very impressive. Miguel, honestly, over the last little while has been impressing me a lot, and I think that if any of the Aprilia riders were to make it to a title, I think it would be him. So it'll be interesting to see how he goes for the rest of the season, and I'm excited to see what else he can do on that Aprilia now that hopefully his bad luck is behind him. Hurt heroes. 2 of our front row sitters, podium sitters in the sprint and podium sitters in the feature race, were of course the injured Marco Bezzecchi and Pecco Bagnaia. both of these guys were really impressive this weekend considering the injuries that they had, and it shows the mettle and how these guys can just push through an incredible amount of pain and still fight, even when they are quite badly hurt. Obviously, none of them were suffering with broken bones, and they were cleared to be fit, but we saw that Bagnaia was in serious pain, and Marco Bezzecchi was perhaps in a bit less pain, but was still in pain, injured. And they did an incredible job to not only get the podium, but to actually push Jorge Martine for as long as they did. So, very impressed by them, and it shows once again just how tough these MotoGP riders are. Ruthless Martinator. Jorge Martine is truly a Terminator, and he had nigh on a perfect weekend. He actually almost got a Grand Slam, or what I count as a Grand Slam in MotoGP, as he took pole position by an incredible 0.4 seconds. We don't see that very often. He took obviously the sprint race win and the feature race win. The only thing holding him back from getting that Grand Slam is that he didn't achieve the fastest lap in the sprint or the feature. But it was still an incredible race weekend for him, and from the first corner, where he took the lead in both races, he never really looked like anyone was going to challenge him. The others were keeping up, and considering they were injured, they did an incredible job, but Martine was in control, and he was just absolutely ruthless. So a very impressive ride for him. I will admit, a few weeks ago, I was thinking that this championship was closed. Pecco had a 60-point lead, and I was thinking that it was just going to be kind of watch Pecco win the title sometime early on in the season, and that's the way it was going to be. But with this injury and the way Jorge Martine rode this weekend, he's closed that gap over the last 2 rounds down to, I think, 36 points. And considering that you can get 37 points for a race weekend now, Jorge Martine is more than in shot for the title still, particularly if Pecco continues to struggle with some of these injuries in a couple of weeks' time in India. Rider of the Weekend. For this weekend, there are lots of riders that deserve the Rider of the Weekend award. You got Bezzecchi, Bagnaia for riding injured and doing so well. Jorge Martine, what an incredible weekend. Certainly more than deserving enough. Marc Marquez even, I could consider Rider of the Weekend, and I've actually got a whole other list here. But I'm going to give it to Dani Pedrosa. I talked about him earlier. He had such an incredible race weekend. For him to come back and do what he does, considering that he doesn't race during the season like all of these other guys, for him to be top KTM in all these sessions is so impressive. And yeah, I'm going to give it to him, even if it's just for nostalgia's sake. Dani Pedrosa is my Rider of the Weekend. I wish he was back on the grid full time in some ways. Struggle of the Weekend. My struggle of the weekend this weekend is really easy. Jack Miller once again. He hasn't looked good for the last couple of rounds. He didn't look good at any point this weekend, really. So he's my struggle of the weekend, and there's not a lot more to say. Right, that's the end of the 5 things we learned from the San Marino GP, and the end of the European Tour as well. MotoGP heads to India, of course, brand new circuit. Probably one of the most exciting races of the year to see how they'll handle that. It gives lots of different people an opportunity to perhaps take a out of the blue race win, like Miguel Oliveira did a few years ago in Portimao. So we'll see how that goes. I'm looking forward to it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, like and subscribe. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.